Hi there, and welcome to Mom Chronicles Live, a series where we talk about what it means to care for our elderly parents. I'm Brett Will Taylor, and I want to start today's episode by asking all of you watching and listening a question. Has anyone ever saved your life? I'm not talking about pulling you from a burning building or out of a riptide. I'm talking about saving your life by helping you through a crisis. In October 2018, today's guest saved my life. And she did so by helping me find the perfect assisted living community when I had only 5 days to do so. I wanted her to be on this show because if you're one of the thousands upon thousands of adult kids who right now are trying to find the right assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, or independent living community for your loved one, maybe she can help save your life too. She is Christy Byerly, and she works for a Dallas-based company that is called Senior Living Specialist, which in just the past 12 years has helped over 7,000 seniors and their families find the best elder communities to meet their needs. Christy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for that. What a good introduction.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here. And as we talked, I love that you have the very Texas background. I have the very suburban background, but that's just the way life is.
We're
So,
in the same place. So
yeah. So I wanted to start by just talking about stories. And, stories are how we understand things. They're how we make sense. They're how we relate to each other. And that's all great. But what I found, especially as I was dealing with my mom as she was aging and getting to the place of needing assisted living, what I found is that I was holding on to stories that were way past their expiration date. And that was keeping me from seeing the story of my mom as she is as an elderly woman. And I just wanted to get yours. Does that show up a lot? Do you see that with families?
yes, I do. I definitely. It's you have an image of your mom. Even me now, and my mom's not elderly, but I still think of my mom when I was younger, or things she would do for me, and she's not doing that for me now. She might be doing that for my kids, but she's not doing that for me now. And so definitely as they age, and especially as they have more needs, then things kind of get put in perspective a little bit more too. I can definitely see that.
Yep. And what do you do for that? I mean, how do you help families, or how can you help folks with that?
I mean, everyone's different, and everyone has their own process of getting to where they can accept the fact that mom or dad or whoever is not who they used to be. So it is a lot of hand holding, lots of asking kind of the right questions. Well, does mom used to love, having a drink or whatever it was? Well, does mom still do that now? Well, no, she really hasn't. She stopped drinking, 10 years ago. But in the child's mind, it still be what they think of, even though it's not even relevant to the one drink that they're having or whatever it is. It's not relevant
Hmm.
anymore.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting when I remember one of the first days after mom had moved into Sunrise, where she is, and I asked her how she was, and she just said, "Well, I'm doing okay, but it's occurred to me none of us are getting out of here alive." And it was like a gut
Oh
punch, and I was like,
gosh,
"Mother,"
yeah.
and she, as our elders do, she just said, "Well, that's the truth, and there's nothing wrong with it." Um, but it's just, and again, something I want to ask you. It's when these senior communities market themselves, it's all love and light and perfectly coiffed elders, and they're wearing the latest fashion and all of that. And I don't mean to be doom and gloom, because where mom is, and I think a lot of assisted living places, they're not depressing. Um, but it is still sort of a traumatic transition. And I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
sometimes what I've learned is it's almost more traumatic for the kids than it is for
Hmm.
the elders. And I know you're a social worker. And so again, I just thought, do you have thoughts on that? Do you have advice for folks? Because you feel guilt and shame and all these things.
Yeah, and especially right now during the COVID period, if you've got somebody who's been at home with you and you've been taking care of them, but you just can't anymore, and with all the virus going around, that's even more pressure on. Why should I move mom? Why should I move mom? But you have to take care of yourself first. You cannot be a good caregiver to a parent to a child, you cannot be a good caregiver unless you're taking care of yourself first. So the little things, like make sure you're drinking enough water, make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're going on a walk or eating some green vegetables, anything that's going to make you, meditate, whatever it is that you do, make sure you're taking time for yourself so that you're fully able to help your loved one. And of course, it's easier said than done when you're a lot of times in a crisis situation like you were. But one thing I do tell families is when you drop your mom off, when you sign your mom up to go to an assisted living, it's almost like dropping a college kid off at their dorm for the first time. Everyone there is in the same situation. They're all there. And no one really knows anybody. Yeah, there might be some friendships formed, but it's still like you're walking into like the first day of college in a new place, and you don't know the rules and you don't know the way things work. So it's kind of have to think of it that way sometimes. Seems to help a little bit, but that's
Yeah,
one
I think
thing.
that's, I love that, because the hardest thing for me was when I came back the day mom had first moved in, and I had told her I would take her down to the dining room. And the staff at Sunrise, which I so appreciate, had said, stop, leave her at the entrance to the dining room. Do not walk her to her table, because she needs, it's like that college thing. She needs to walk in. She needs, like, this is where she lives now. And it just broke my heart. And I was like, this is like dropping your kid off at kindergarten or something. You know what I mean? I don't mean to infantilize or whatever the word is my mom, because she's pretty together on so many things, but it just was like, wow, this is huge.
And any move is huge. For any age, a move is huge. But especially having the resident, the person, realize what they're going into. I mean, like your mom said, they're not getting out of there alive, very many of them, and it's definitely harder, I think, on the children, because the person, the mom, it's kind of somewhat come to accept it some way. Maybe not where you want her to be, but they probably know somewhere deep inside that they're obviously getting older and need more care.
And I think that's right. And it's so interesting. I find, because I haven't been able to hug my mom since March 11th. And so, but I go and I talk to her through her window every day. And, there is and you and I talked about this, there is a resilience to our elders that we forget. And I think there's this tendency as kids sometimes where you want to hover over them, you want to save them, you want to fix them, you want to make it all right. And I think that's a lot of times more our stuff than their stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I mean, not everyone has come to the realization that, they're needing more help, but I mean, they probably are at some point going to realize that. And the kids, like you said, trying to save, I think that's a really good word. They don't want mom to die, even though she's 94 and has, she's pretty much bedbound. They still want to hold on to that. But sometimes I feel like the seniors or residents, they do value quality of life too. And I think that's important, that we make sure that we listen to what they want versus what we want. And it's hard to separate. It really is hard to separate.
Yeah, and I want to underscore that point, because I think that's so key. My very first job out of college was to work as a college admissions counselor, and I can for University of Texas. And I remember sitting in my little office with the parents and the kids, and inevitably, when you would say, "Tell me what you want to study," the parents, usually the dad, would say he wants to study business, or she wants to be a lawyer. And I think that shows up again as we try to find places for our parents. And I guess really, who's more important? Is it to listen to the parents, or do the kids know best?
Yeah. And that's a fine line. It's like in my role, because I can look at all the clinical information and say, your mom needs this, this, and this. But at the same time, your mom way better than I do. I'm just looking, at a very brief synopsis of your mom. But yes, your mom better, but does that mean you're going to value what mom really wants and what mom really needs?
And so is that part of what you do, and part of what we need to allow folks in these senior communities to do? You help us see our blind spots, or help look beyond them, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. and just maybe like put a twist on it so that you're seeing it in a different a way. And I do think my background in social work, I do think that helps me. But it's, yeah, I would say trying to see what somebody might be missing,
Mm.
and point that out in a gentle way. And a lot of, I mean, there's a spectrum of how gentle you have to be. With somebody like you, I could be like, all right, listen, this is what mom needs, right? And you're going to respect that honesty. But some people aren't ready to hear the whole truth. And so you have to kind of tread lightly and ask more kind of questions than telling. Like, well, before mom had a hip replacement, was she feeding herself or were you having to help her? And then
Mm.
somebody might remember, oh yeah, that's right. I was having to, cut it up in bites and I'd have to help her with her fork. But they didn't really think that, it doesn't want to register that you're actually having to help your mom, until you have to see it sometimes.
Wow. What do you think is the hardest thing to see? What's the hardest thing for kids? What's what do you really not want to let go of?
Who mom used to be.
Hmm.
And that can be different things for anybody. It could be mom used to take me fishing, or mom used to always sit and talk with me and we could talk about my kids, or mom used to watch my kids, or mom was an accountant and she always talked about numbers and wanted to do crosswords, and now she can't anymore. And I think that is tough. Where they are now may not be where they were even 5 years ago or 5 months ago, or just seeing where they are now,
Yeah.
versus what you want to see in your eyes.
And I think what's amazing about at least what our experience with assisted living is, if you find the right place, and you are so talented at helping at least people in Dallas find the right place, and you can put down the old stories, you have a chance to start a new story with your parent, that's different,
Right.
that says mom is. All right, so we've talked about stories and emotions, but this is I know when this process shows up for folks, it can feel very overwhelming, and it certainly did for me. And you don't know where to begin. You don't know how to think about it because you swore you never would think about it. So let's wrap up with just some brass tacks in a way, which is, what are the sort of first steps, or what are the essential steps or questions that everybody should think about?
Well, I will say one thing is that we want to try to avoid a crisis situation. We don't want to be like in your situation. You got 5
Right.
days and he's out of here. So even if you're not sure that it's time, it's good to have a plan in place in case there is a crisis situation. So it might be good to start looking, and you don't even have to let your mom or dad know that you're looking. You can do some research, by yourself. And then if the time ever comes, hey, you know what, we've got it narrowed down to 2 or 3, and then we can talk more specifically. But I think the first thing would be to try to avoid that crisis situation, which of course we can do it and we can make it happen in that crisis situation, but you're in a crisis already. You're dealing with how mom's doing in the hospital or rehab and her pain and everything else. And then you're thinking about having to move her stuff and what would you move? It's so much. So I would say that would be the first step, is starting beforehand. And obviously I can help with that. And like I said, you don't have to tell mom and dad what you're doing. We can do it on the back end and just put it in your back pocket for later. But a big question that I think a lot of people don't ask is, who is in charge? Who runs this place? Is it the activities director? Is it the director of nursing? Is it the owner, executive director? Is it admissions? Like, who's going to be there on the day-to-day stuff to know your mom the best? And I'm sure like it can vary, and it may not be the person you thought it was going to be when you were looking. And so who's going to be your go-to if you need anything? That would be a good question that I would start with. Another thing that people may not know to ask is, are prices negotiable? Because prices are negotiable. And that's a lot of times the communities will give our team a special because that's what we do. We're doing it so often. But ask about specials, ask about negotiating rates, ask if the rates are going to go up every year. Have those financial questions answered before you even sign any paperwork, because those are things that you definitely want to know, and they're negotiable.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to know that you can negotiate.
And that's a perfect place to wrap this up, Christy, because I think the piece is ask questions. Ask
Definitely.
questions of the community, ask questions of your mom or your dad or your aunt or whoever, and ask questions of yourself. And I think this goes back to your self-care comments, which is, am I in the place to make this decision in the next 30 minutes, or do I need to say, I got to go take a walk or take a breath or whatever? And I think that's it. Ask questions. What are you really seeing? And if you're in Dallas, ask for Christy, or anyone from Senior Living Specialists, because y'all are a godsend. And I think with that, we want to thank everybody, including my mom, who always watches and listens to this, for joining us, and those of you who are on the journey of working with your loved ones for the senior living community. May you be as lucky as my mom and I have been and find the right place, which I'm sure you will be. So thanks for watching and listening in, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Thanks for having me.